Popcorn rice after discussion.
Want to know some more fun facts?
Isn't it awesome to see some of your favorite content creators and favorite people, honestly, that you follow here on this app, be a part of this amazing community called the Nerd Initiative?
Not work out, but I'm here with two amazing artists, Bill and Linda Reinhold. Did I pronounce your name right? Okay, great. First off, you're kind of like locals, right? Like you're from the Chicago area?
I grew up in Chicago. Linda was born in Chicago, but lived in the suburbs of Chicago. And so when we got married, we moved to Evanston, lived there for 12 years, and now we live in Crystal Lake, which is a suburb of Chicago. But I grew up in the city on the north side.
So this is like a local convention for you.
It is. This has become the best replacement ever with the old Chicago Con, and which that was taken over by Wizard, and it was never quite the same in a lot of ways. This is more like closer to what the old Chicago Con was, only bigger, but still, it's great. We really like it.
How has the weekend been so far? I mean, how's it been going?
Very busy. Yeah, it's been great. This year, I think they've really attracted a lot of people. I think it seems to be the biggest it's been since the last one they had that was right at the beginning of the pandemic. And that was a huge one. And then when they came back, they had to gear up. And now this feels like they really get into those old numbers again.
So, one of our key things we love to ask people is their nerd origin story. So we love finding out what your first experience with. I mean, it could be comics, it could be movies. Like the first thing that anything you can remember that brought you in. Like, what was that first experience? It could be a movie, it could be a comic.
Well, my attraction to comic books, being an artist, let's say, was reading comic books in the 60s. I was a big fan of Marvel comics. I had seen DC comic books, back in the day. Go to the barbershop, there'd be some comic books there or other places. So that usually it was Superman, Batman, The Flash, or whatever. I didn't see Marvel comics much. Supposedly they weren't distributed well back then. And but then I discovered them one time at a small, it wasn't a comic shop, it was just a small store that had a rack of comics. And they had 2 issues of Daredevil in a row. And I thought, I have to get them both. And that started it. And then I wanted the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And that's when I really got into the art of it and fooled around with it as a kid, trying to draw my own comics on notebook paper and stuff. But hers is simpler of how the comic books you read. What's the one you always mention, the first one you used to read all the time?
Oh, Archie comics?
Little Lulu?
Little Lulu, all the...
You should speak up.
Oh, all the Disney books, Looney Tunes, and Little Lotta, Richie Rich.
But not superheroes.
No, I didn't like superheroes, so I fell into comics in a strange way. When I moved to New York, I got a job selling cosmetics. And my mother was a travel rep for Estee Lauder, so I had always been familiar with the product, so I kind of fell into that. I wasn't happy. It just wasn't my thing, and so I had a number of friends looking out for a job for me, and one of them, who worked also in cosmetics, was dating an older guy who happened to know Stan Lee. So one day he decided to look at my portfolio and gave me about 7 names on a list of people in advertising and different things I might be interested in. And on down the list, Marvel Comics Stan Lee. Well, try calling Stan Lee. I ended up getting an appointment to show my work, show my portfolio. It was a beastly hot day in New York. I had a very heavy bag. I went into this building. There's this lovely young woman waiting for the elevator. And we get in together, and she asks me where I'm going. I forget what floor, but she says, "Oh, I'm going there too." So we both get off the elevator. She grabs my arm, takes me into the middle of the room, and says, "Can't we get this poor girl a job?"
And she was,
Joni Lee, Stan's daughter.
yeah.
At least we called her. She's JC nowadays, and I haven't seen her in 50 years, but she was extremely nice to me, and we became friends. And the art director was Frank Giacoya in those days. Several other people looked at my portfolio and hired me on the spot. They had just lost a guy in the production office, and I started pasting up word balloons, things like that. And fortunately, I already knew how to letter, so I was doing corrections. And a little while later, Marie Severin handed me a bunch of, Velox. In those days, they colored photo prints, not Xeroxes, because they weren't invented yet. And so I'd like to see how you do as a colorist. And she ended up loving my work, so I ended up working side by side with her in the coloring department. I loved Marvel. I loved working at Marvel. It was the best job ever. But the office was really tiny. The first office I worked in was about 12 people.
And unlike many people here, she didn't have the dream of getting into comic books. It just happened because she was looking for a job as an artist. Yeah.
I mean, wow, I love talking about those days too. It's like my grandfather grew up. I'm originally from New York, and I grew up in South Florida, and I live there now again. So I love that stuff. But working together and going to conventions together, how is that? That's really such a cool thing. You guys share a passion for art together too.
Well, we worked together a lot, especially when I was doing a lot of inking. She'd basically be like my assistant. And then before that, she was coloring all my work. So, and now occasionally we do commissions together, things like she's doing right now, or we do them at home. But in general, I'm still working in comics, but she's
I have two brilliant
basically,
kids,
I guess.
by the way. My son's a drummer. His band is Lever. They play all over Chicago and the Midwest. And our daughter is a graphic designer. She's amazing and beautiful. So we're pretty proud parents.
That's awesome.
It is awesome.
That's amazing. And the final thing I would ask is, I mean, you both have worked on amazing characters, and it just goes like, Punisher's my personal favorite, but are there any that stick out that are your favorites to work on, on the map?
That'd be Batman, probably for me. And I haven't done it that much. But before that, the character I was known for the most was this character, the Badger from First Comics, and I love that character too. But I guess I'm thinking mainstream characters. Probably my favorite one to draw probably is Batman, even though I've done so much Punisher. But I just love the cape and the living in the city and up in the rooftops and all that stuff. So.
Thank you guys so much. I know this is an awkward spot to do, but thank you so much.
That was our favorite book we did
Bill
together.
drew and inked it, and
Silver Surfer, Homecoming, written by Jim
anyway, yeah, and so I did the coloring. I love that book. But when I was working for Marvel in the 90s, I got to do Barbie, and that was so much fun. And then they lost, what do you call that? They had the rights. They had the rights, and then they lost the rights, and so they didn't do Barbie anymore. But that was a lot of fun. I loved it.